everyone, Serena here from Spin and Dye in Texas. Welcome to, oh my gosh, is it really? I think it's week 8. I think it is. So welcome to week 8 of Quarantine Fiber Group. I'm so glad to have you guys here. I'm doing my farmer chic look today with my suspenders. I love them. And I know you are all waiting for backstrap weaving today. And unfortunately, I had an epiphany last night and realized that I do not have a way to give you guys a good angle on the weaving so you can really see how it works, or tablet weaving or backstrap weaving. Anyway, so because of that, I decided I'm going to hold off, do a little research, see if I can get 2 cameras set up to actually show that. And instead, I thought we would do silk hanky spinning. Because number 1, I've had silk hankies on the brain this past week, and number 2, it's really fun to do. A lot of people aren't familiar with silk hankies, and I think because of that, it can be a little bit intimidating, the idea of starting to spin them. So I have some here that we'll be spinning in just a minute, but first, I thought I would share this. This is what I worked on this week. So this is 8 ounces. I have my little tag on there so I don't forget. This is 8 ounces of Icelandic wool. It's the first time I've spun Icelandic, and it was an interesting experience. It's not my favorite fiber to work with, I've decided, but it was fun to do once. And because it's such a coarse fiber, what I'm going to end up doing with it is making a rug. So I have 162 yards here. I do have a couple other coarse fibers that I need to get spun. So I will spin those up in the next month or so and then weave a rug for my kitchen. So that's my plan with that. But it's such a pretty wool. This one is a tricolor, so it's gray, black, and white. And it has a natural, almost sheen to it. When you look at it, you would expect it to feel softer than it actually does. So I'm glad that I finally got around to spinning this. I've had it for a while. Don't know that I'll spin Icelandic again, but it was fun to do. So that was what I worked on this past weekend and finished amazingly. And now let's look at silk hankies. So I had mentioned these in a meeting a couple weeks ago, and I had showed you some undyed hankies for sure, and I think I showed you some of the dyed ones I did last week. But this is a silk hanky, and you can see my super bright shirt through it. That's because they're very, very thin. You're not going to get a lot of spinning fiber out of one hanky, but usually you buy more than one if you're going to buy them dyed or undyed. And the interesting thing about these silk hankies is that it looks like there's lots of fibers in there. But in actuality, this is all one single fiber that came from a silkworm cocoon. There's something on there, I don't know what that is. A silkworm cocoon, and they take that cocoon, they wet it and degum it because they are kind of gummy from the process that the worm uses to create the cocoons. And then they stretch it over a square and create these very cool hankies that you can spin from. You can spin them dyed or undyed. I'm going to use dyed ones because I think they'll show up better on the camera for you guys to be able to see. Now, I will say, if you watch this and you're like, oh my goodness, that looks like so much fun, I really need to try it out. I am going to have some silk hanky grab bags available on my Etsy shop for pretty cheap. And so if you want to give it a shot and you're just not wanting to invest a lot of money and that kind of thing, you can do it there. No obligation, of course, just an FYI. There's plenty of other companies out there that offer silk hankies that you can buy that are dyed or undyed. So I always feel weird promoting myself. I don't want people to feel an obligation. Anyway, my dogs have been barky all day today, so if they interrupt us, I apologize in advance. So, silk hankies, let's talk. First and foremost, anytime you're dealing with raw silk, one thing to keep in mind is that it's very clingy. The fiber is very, very thin, and it will grab onto anything. So if your hands are rough, if your legs are unshaven, anything like that, the fibers will grab on and kind of cling and stretch. So it's always a good idea before you work with hankies to give yourself a little spa day, do a little scrub on the hands, a scrub on and up to about here on your arm. Just an exfoliating scrub is fine. It doesn't have to be anything special. The one that I use today is coffee and coconut oil, which smells, oh my God, so phenomenal. But anything, you can do a sugar scrub, anything. You just want to get off some of that dead skin before you work with it, just because you're going to find it less irritating. When I do start spinning on my wheel, I'm going to have my tension on the brake band turned up way, way high, because this is a very, very, very long fiber that you're dealing with, and you do not want to put a ton of twist in it, because you're not going to be holding, if you have a 2-inch staple length and you spin, you want to put a lot of twist in, because you want to make sure that you are holding those fibers together, or a fair amount of twist. With silk, I've found that if you overspin it, it gets very ropey very fast. So I'm going to turn my tension up so that I get less twist in there and I end up with a softer finish. Now, let's get started. So the hankies are really interesting, because you're not going to, it's not like working with a bat where you're just going to kind of stretch it out a little bit, maybe pull some fibers off and start, because it's all one piece of fiber technically. So what we want to do for pre-drafting is we want to actually get our fingers right there in the center, kind of poke them through the fiber. So you can see I've made a bit of a hole, and then we're just going to start stretching. And notice it's a stretch, it's not a tear. And the reason why it's a stretch and not a tear is, again, because this is all one fiber. So all we're doing is pulling the fibers very, very thinly. And we're just going to we're going to leave it as an intact circle for now. It's just easier to work with that way, I find. And I'm just going to keep stretching it out. Now, this stretching process can take a while, because I like to have very thin silk. I've already mentioned on here before that I I'm a thin spinner anyway. But when it comes to silk in particular, what I will do with these silk hankies is I will use them to auto wrap a single as I'm spinning. And so for that, I want something that's a little bit thinner. So I'm going to keep stretching this out. Now, I've got a bunch of hankies over here. You can kind of see what I got on my sheet here. So I have options. If I get through this one, I can do another one. And I will probably get through this one, because it does spin pretty fast, because this is the majority of the drafting that you do. The pull here, when you pre-draft regular sheep's wool, it tends to be a very light pull that you're doing. With silk, it's going to be a firmer pull. And notice how far apart my hands are. Again, this is one fiber that's just stretching, 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 stretching. So because of that, you want to keep your hands far apart. The closer they are, the harder time you're going to have trying to get it pulled out. So my hands are probably about 2.5, 3 feet apart as I'm stretching, and I'm still putting a little bit of oomph behind the pull. I try to make sure that it's drafted relatively evenly. Same if you were pre-drafting a wool. Particularly with silk, though, it's a good idea to do that, because at least when I spin it, I don't do a lot of drafting as I'm spinning. Most of my drafting is done right here. So because of that, I'm going to make sure to make it as even as possible. and honestly, as long as possible. It's very fun to do. And it's kind of satisfying to end up with this really long piece. It's like when you were a kid and they would do that thing in school where they would have you cut a piece of paper a specific way, and then you open it up, and you take this 8.5 by 11 piece of paper and you open it up and it's a big circle. It's kind of that same satisfaction when you stretch these out because they're so thin and wispy when they're intact. And then when you start pulling them apart, you think, what am I going to get out of that? Like a foot, 2 feet worth of fiber? No. Now, if you were going to spin a chunky silk, which I don't think I've ever seen a chunky silk yarn, but if you were going to, you'll get less out of it. But if you're going to spin something that's even fingering weight, even sport weight, you'll get a fair amount out of an individual hanky. Not enough to do a project with one hanky, but still a fair amount. Okay, sorry. All right, so I'm still stretching, and I've gotten almost all the way around. I have about this much left to do. So it goes by relatively quickly, but you do want to make sure to make it all the way around. Once you have it on the wheel, you really don't want to spend time worrying about one section that you haven't drafted yet. So just going to keep going here. Now, I do have this bowl here. I meant to try and kind of feed it into the bowl, and then I forgot. But it is a good idea, especially if you're working on carpet. I happen to be working on fake hardwood floor, which is better for this particular fiber. But if you are working on carpet or a rug and anything like that, make sure that you have something to put the silk into as you're drafting it, because if not, it's going to cling to the fibers of your carpet, and it won't make it unusable. It will make it annoying though. You can see it keeps like getting caught on my wheel. It gets cut. It's, oh, you can't see it. It's not in the frame, but it's like stuck to my little table over here on the side. It's just very, very clingy. And so you just want to keep that in mind. Having a bowl is very, very helpful. And if not, even if you had like a sheet, kind of like this one here, something like that would work too if you wanted to pile the silk onto that. Just something to keep it from getting in contact with other fibers that might make it want to cling. Almost done here. Now, another thing to keep in mind when you're purchasing silk hankies, if you're purchasing dyed ones, the color that they appear to be in the picture, or even when you get them in person, is going to look slightly different than how they spin up because of the way that you manipulate the fiber when you're drafting it. So let me see if I can show you this one real quick. So this one, which I think is so pretty, it's like splotchy white, blue, and pink. It looks so cool. But once I start stretching it out, what's going to happen is these blues and these pinks are going to run up against each other. The whites, you might have long white sections in there versus it coming out as the same type of saturation that you see when it's in this form. So it's just something to keep in mind. It's not going to, it's not like it's going to change colors. It's not a mood ring. It's not the mood ring of the fiber world. It's just it just might be a little bit lighter than you're expecting or a little bit darker, depending on how it was dyed originally. So just an FYI on that. And it's just the nature of the fiber. It's not that the dye technique was poor or anything like that. It's just the way that it spins up. Okay, so I have this very, very long, I can't even lift the whole thing up for you, but I have this very long, very thin, relatively even, except for right here, of course, relatively evenly drafted piece of silk that is still in a loop. So now we need to separate it. So I'm going to find a spot where it's kind of thin. Right here looks good. And I'm just going to pull until it separates. Now I have a beginning and an end. Well, this is going to be my beginning. This is going to be my end. But you see what I'm saying. So I'm going to set that piece on the ground. I'm going to draft with this. I'm going to spin with this. So I've got my wheel set up already. I'm adjusting the tension. Again, we want a quick uptake on the wheel. So make sure that you've tightened your brake band appropriately. All wheels are going to tighten up a little, or, all brake bands work a little bit differently. You know your wheel and you know what you're comfortable spinning. So keep that in mind as well. But a lot of uptake. The highest uptake that you are comfortable with is what I would recommend to start. You can always loosen it. So, and then I'm going to do a slow pedal on this because, well, maybe not so slow. All right, so I'm getting that twist in there. And then once you get to this point, it's very much, it's very much like spinning any other fiber, except for when it slips off your leader like that, which I can't remember the last time that happened. It's very similar to spinning any other type of wool that you might work with in regards to the actual process of spinning. You just want to make sure that your tension is high and that that you've drafted it to you've drafted it almost as much as you want it to be drafted, because drafting once you're spinning is very, very difficult with the length of these particular fibers. So, all right, there we go. So I've got pretty good uptake on my wheel. It did it again. I have never had this happen before. Of course, it's because people are watching me. So the way I do my leaders is I make them in a loop, and then I run the fiber through the loop, and that way I get a good grip to start with. I don't have to latch on to the fibers of whatever I'm spinning, because I just found that so frustrating when I started spinning. I'm going to make this longer. And it almost made me stop because I couldn't get the fibers to hold enough to get my spinning started. So all right, I think I got it this time. I made my little loop there a little bit longer than I normally would because it didn't seem to want to hold. And it's probably just the nature of the silk. Silk is slippery. And I will turn my wheel so you can see what I have on here in just a little bit. So you'll be able to see kind of how the fiber comes out. I like to spin silk. I like to spin silk a little unevenly because of what I use it for. You can absolutely get an even spin out of your silk. And you can see I am kind of doing a little bit of a draft here, but it's a much wider space that I have between my two hands, and it's not as smooth for me. If you work a lot with Teeswater or one of the other long luxury fibers, you may have less of a learning curve in that regard. Or if you always do a long draw. I'm not real big on the long draw. So, I had mentioned at the top that I use this for auto wrap. So auto wrap, I think, is a pretty well-known spinning technique. I learned it from J.C. Boggs' book about art spinning. But my understanding is most people do call it that. That's not just her name. Basically, what I do is I take the silk and I wind it into a ball, or you could do it in a cake too, but I never have that much silk. You wind it into a ball, put it in a bowl on the floor, start spinning your single, bring the silk up to your single, let it grab on, and then you just let that silk wrap however it feels like wrapping as you are drafting and spinning your single. It's a very, very, very cool technique if you want a kind of artsy yarn without it being too, you want it artsy but not fartsy, then it's a fun technique to learn. So it's called auto wrap. But because of that, I do like to have my silk have some variation in thickness, because I think it just adds to the aesthetic of the technique. And I like yarn to be artsy and not fartsy myself. So I prefer that method because it adds a little art, a little funk to it without going to the point of ridiculous, like something that I just will never use. So that's what I do with these. You can, of course, spin anything else. If you have enough silk, you could spin enough to do a full project with the silk. I like what I do with silk because I think it adds a really fun touch to wool, and it adds that great natural shine that it has to any wool fiber that you want to use, especially one that's maybe a little bit darker, a little bit more coarse, but still usable, like a Corriedale. I always find Corriedale to spin up a little rough and a little bit, what's the word I'm looking for? Like, Corriedale doesn't really shine for me. It doesn't have a good pop to it. Merino can take color beautifully, and because of that, it really pops no matter what color you're using. It doesn't matter. Corriedale just doesn't have that quality, in my opinion. So adding silk to Corriedale would be really good for me because I think it would give it that extra pop. Now, one thing to keep in mind is you do have this whole kind of pile of silk at your feet. Careful not to move your feet around too much. And if you run into a knot or a little tangle like I just did, you just want to pull it out very gently, and it usually will come out just fine. So now what I'm going to do with this, because I am going to use it as an auto wrap, as I mentioned, is I'm going to do this full hanky, and then I'm going to switch to another hanky. No fuss on that one. I'm not going to do a specific pattern because I want it to, it'll all go against a solid color. I'm thinking maybe a white or a black. I don't know, probably a white. Probably go right up against like a bleached merino or something like that. And so I'm just going to have the wrap transition in color and have the single stay solid. So I'm not going to get all of that done tonight, of course, because we only have an hour and I do not spin that fast. But I will get it done eventually, and I'll post it on my Instagram. All right, but that's spinning hankies. When I get to the next hanky, which I will because I'm almost done with this one, I will stop again and show you guys how I drafted that one, just in case you missed it at the beginning. But other than that, this is using silk hankies. So don't be intimidated by them if you see them on an Etsy shop and think, oh my God, that's so pretty, I want to do something with it. Yeah, don't be intimidated. Buy them, try it out. It's crazy easy, and worst case scenario, if you don't spin your first one even, you'll at least end up with something that looks very cool as an accent to another fiber, yarn, whatever. So I am having a very good week so far, you guys. So first of all, my mom came up with the most genius idea. I have a niece and a nephew that are, my nephew is 3, oh my gosh, he'll be 4 in just a couple months, and my niece is 1.5 years. And we all live in different houses, obviously, and my mom lives far away. And so with quarantine, we haven't been together in 2 months. So my mom came up with the most fun idea. The three of us all have portals. And so at 4 o'clock today, we had a family dance party on the portal. My mom played music for my nephew, and we danced and laughed, and it was just so much fun. There's so many ways to stay connected during all of this, and just if you live far away from family, friends, whatever, in general, sometimes it has nothing to do with quarantine, and it's just so fun when you discover a new way to stay together. So I had a blast. I hope we do it again. I think we should make it a bi-weekly dance party or something. I don't know. I moved from my home state to Texas when I was 10, and that was 25-ish years ago now. And at the time, it was, that was 25 years ago-ish. At the time, it was so far away, and it was so, we didn't have the internet. The internet existed at that point, but it didn't exist like it does today. We didn't have iPads and FaceTime and video chatting. It was all still stuff that they talked about on sci-fi movies. And I remember how far away I felt from my family and from the whole world that I had lived in my whole life up to that point. I was 10 years old. And I remember just being so sad that we were so far away. And so with all of this going on, it highlights how far it is that we've actually come. Because despite the fact that I haven't in person seen my niece and nephew in more than 2 months, because we hadn't seen each other for a couple weeks prior to that, prior to the quarantine. And despite that, I've gotten to see my nephew every day, almost every day, because he calls me on the portal, sometimes just to chat, sometimes because he wants to use the effects, and it's more fun if you have somebody on the other end to laugh at him. But I've seen him every single day, and it's such a cool thing to realize how much technology is working for us. So anyway, that was my super fun afternoon. And then this morning, I started a new workout. I'm not going to call it a workout plan because that sounds like I actually do have a plan, and I don't. But I worked out this morning, which is the first time in probably about 2 years. So it was just exciting and fun. So quarantine is finally pushing me to do stuff that I need to start doing. It only took 2 months. I got that weaving hung up. If you're on my Instagram, you saw that. I got that done. Took me 3 months to do that, and finally got around to it. Well, 3 months since I finished the weaving, I mean. And today I started working out again. So it's a good start to the week, and it's a testament to what being stuck in the house for so long will do to you, because it made me actually want to work out again, which I have to tell you is not my favorite thing to do. So I'm almost done with this piece, or this hanky, and then I'll grab another one and draft it out. But before I do, let me show you guys what I've got out of this one, so you kind of have an idea. Now again, my single here is not even, and it is on the thinner side as well. So if you were spinning something thicker, if you were spinning something very, very thin, you might see a different result, but this will just give you an idea. Whoop, sorry, I didn't mean to bump into you there. But that is what I've got so far. Not the yellow, obviously. That was my leader. But this right here is what I've got so far. The next one that I do will be a contrasting color, so you can actually see it a little bit better. but you don't get a lot out of a single hanky. All right, let me get this turned back, and I'll grab another one. So just a reminder on how we're going to do this. I do want it to contrast, so let me grab a pink one. I just grabbed all the ones that I liked. Okay, so just a reminder, I have this pink one here that I'm going to do it with. You are going to take your fingers, poke through the center, create a hole, and then just start pulling. This first pull is going to be the hardest one. Think bow and arrow, you know? And then after that, it starts, the fiber starts to slide against itself pretty easily. Oh, I'm tongue-tied today. It's all that working I did. All right. And then you just pull until you have drafted all the way around the circle. Keep the circle intact while you're drafting, and then separate when you've completed. Oy, we got stuff sticking everywhere. Grab a drink real quick. But yeah, so my Monday has been very, very good because I felt very productive and I got to have fun with my niece and nephew and my mom and my sister. I mean, they were there too, so I guess. But my niece and my nephew are I don't even know what. Light of my life is weird because they're not my kids, but they just bring me so much joy and so much happiness that spending time with them is one of my favorite things to do on earth. So I had a blast today. This one's extra, it seems extra clingy. Either that or maybe I'm drafting it a little bit thinner. Maybe that's all it is. And then just remember, if you're doing this on carpet, to make sure that you have something to drop your fiber into and not just dropping it on the carpet, because it will get annoying how it gets stuck. So something else to think about when you're talking about silk is it's really, really strong. Like deceptively, crazily strong. I have no idea why worms need to have this special power to create crazy strong fiber. It seems like if they ever get self-awareness, they might be able to take over the world. But it is just very, very strong. So when you're spinning, if you do want to spin something that is extremely thin, silk is the fiber to try it with. It will spin thin and still hold without breaking as you're spinning. Now, with that being said, do I recommend spinning a nice thin lace weight piece and then trying to hold something up with it over your friend's head? Probably not. You know, it will break eventually. But compared to wool or cotton even, from a spinning perspective, silk is just crazy, crazy strong. I know part of that comes from just the length of the fiber, but that cannot be all of it, because even a small section spun is very, very strong. So it's the fiber itself that's so powerful. That's kind of a weird word to use, huh? Powerful. Well, it is powerful in its own way. I mean, if you were putting it up against merino, the silk would kick merino's butt. So it's a strength in its own way, or a power in its own way. All right. So I told my mom that I was going to start working out, and I told her the classes that I wanted to, they're online classes, not like in person, obviously. But please don't write me about how I need to be in quarantine. I promise I am. But the classes that I want to do, they're like a mixed martial arts style class, only it's mixed martial arts with aerobic, kind of like Tae Bo back in the day, if that gives you a good, if you remember Tae Bo, which was my favorite thing, It's the same idea. And I told my mom I like to do a workout that makes me feel like I can beat people up. And she's like, Serena, that sounds mean. Why do you? I said, no, Mom. I don't want to actually beat people up. I just want to feel like if I ever had to beat people up, I absolutely could for self-defense. She thought that was pretty funny. I really do feel that way though. Plus, I feel like when I do any type of exercise that makes me feel like I'm kicking butt, I always feel like I do have a better workout. So that's another reason why I enjoy doing it. But she was like, why do you want to beat people up? That's so weird. No, I don't want to actually do it. I just want to know that if I ever was presented with the opportunity to beat up a potential attacker, that I actually could. So, funny story. So, Boomer, who is not in frame, he's over there today sleeping, but Boomer is a rescue dog that we adopted from the shelter in the town we used to live in. And when we adopted him, we were warned that he has aggression issues. And so we adopted him, and we discovered pretty quickly that he was in a home that had some serious abuse happening, not just to him, but to the other people in the home. And we figured that out because one time my husband, who is in no way an unkind person, especially to me, was making a joke one time, and he came in the house and he closed the door and he looked at me and he went, "Woman?" And Boomer flipped out, started barking at him, got between us immediately, snarling. And so from then on, we knew that he had definitely witnessed some type of abuse, and he was the protector type dog, when it came to me at least. So we are always aware of that, and we try very much to not do anything that would make him, he's a lot calmer now, but we've always tried to not do anything that will make him feel uncomfortable. If my husband raises his voice, which is so rare, I can't even remember the last time it happened, but if my husband raises his voice, it's enough to get Boomer kind of barky. So anyway, the whole point of me telling you all of that is, one time I went through this period where I was trying to learn self-defense moves. And I found these really cool videos on YouTube. I wish I could remember who it was, but it showed you how to escape an attacker if they had you in this position, in this position, in this position. And they were so informative and so interesting. So I was trying to practice the move, and Boomer was outside. And I said, "Chris, help me. Come help me." And so he came over, and he was being the attacker, and I was being the escapee, right? Because I had to practice the move that I had learned. And then Boomer came inside, and I said, and he was over in the other room getting water from the water bowl. I said, "Let's do it one more time because he's over there. He won't even notice. Just real quick. I think I got it this time." And Chris was like, "Okay, we can do that." Of course, the minute we started trying to do it, which it involved him, I think, having me kind of like from behind, something like that. The minute we started to do it, Boomer comes around the corner and starts snarling and snapping at my husband, at Chris, and actually caught him a little bit with either his teeth or his nails. We're not sure which. But he caught Chris a little. I felt so bad. He was like, "You said he wouldn't notice." Of course he'll notice. It's only funny because no one got hurt and because Boomer is much, much, much better now, much calmer. But at the time, I felt very bad because, and I learned a lesson, which is that never underestimate what a dog will notice, because especially if he's a protector dog, which Boomer absolutely is. And but it's been a couple years since that happened, and still Chris will never let me forget it. He'll be like, yeah, you just want him to attack me. No, I swear he won't attack you this time. Anyway, but Boomer is much better now. He is a lot calmer. When we got him, we could not pick him up because he did not allow that. We could not get him to listen, of course, which most abused dogs don't really, listen well. And now he'll listen to you when you call him. And if he gets too overly stimulated, like if he sees rabbits or something like that, and that's what he's chasing, and you can't really get his attention, usually just shaking a treat bag is enough to break him from that hyper focus that they get when they're hunting or attacking. So for him to have made it that far at this point is so exciting for us. I'll just never forget that because Chris was so mad at me. So mad. He's like, I told you. He said, I didn't think you would come around the corner, I swear. So, yeah. Anyway, I guess that has nothing to do with nothing. It was just a funny story I love to share because I was so dumb. So even this one, so this is my second hanky, and I've got probably 4 or 5 feet left, but that's going to spin up pretty quick. So you can see how quickly you can get through these and how little you actually get. It's a lot more than you would expect, but it is still not a lot of fiber. So I think I'll probably, let's see, got about 20 minutes left. I think I'll probably get through 3 in an hour. If I wasn't talking, you could get through more in an hour, but I'll probably get through 3 and hopefully be able to show you how much fiber you get out of 3. So you can, or how much of a single you get out of 3, so that you can kind of determine how much you want to spin at one time for if you decide to do this for a project or a very specific thing. They are so pretty when you spin them, though. And honestly, you see the sheen, that kind of iconic sheen of the silk a little bit when it's in that hanky form. But when you spin it up, oh my gosh, it's like it's luminescent almost. It's so shiny and not like metal shiny, but just it shimmers, and you can see it. Like even on my bobbin, I can see that shimmer in it. Although from what I have in my hands, I would never suspect that that's how it would spin up if I didn't know what silk was. So it's just a neat fiber to work with. And then silkworms are really fun too. I thought about, so I went through a period where I really wanted Angora rabbits. And I really, really wanted them. And then I remembered that my dogs have a very primal hunting instinct. And if I got Angora rabbits, they probably would not survive very long. And I wouldn't want to do that to a rabbit or my dogs because I don't want to see my dogs like that. So I changed my mind and I was like, okay, I guess I can't get Angora rabbits anytime soon. So then I was thinking, well, maybe I could get some silkworms. And I could get the silk cocoons, and I could process the cocoons into hankies, and at least then I could be producing some type of fiber on my own, because I can't have sheep or goats. We live in a place that doesn't allow you to have goats at your house. So, yes, we actually did look it up when we moved here, but anyway. So I thought about silkworms. They're actually very difficult to work with. And then processing the silk is such it's not just that it's a tedious process. If you want to process the silk not in hanky format, but from the cocoon just to a silk, to fiber, or to roving, let's just call it that. Although I don't know that that's the right word. It is, you have to find the end of the silk piece on your little cocoon, and then you just start unwinding it. And you unwind it onto a wheel, but still, it was just so much that I decided I like doing this with hankies. So, okay. Here, I'm going to lean to the side so that you can see that fiber that I have there. So this pink right here is what I've just finished up, and this purple was the first one that I did. So look at how light it is, and even the purple is not quite, sorry, I'm trying to stop moving so you can see it. It's not quite the same color that it was in the hanky. The purple is a little bit more of a gray purple, I think is the best way to put it, than a bright white purple. So, I mean, not white purple, but bright purple with a lot of blues in it. It takes on, and I think it's from the amount of white that's in the silk, it just takes on, but you can see you do get some fiber out of it. It's not like it's nothing on there. So I'm going to do this spotted one now because I just think it's so pretty. This is the one that I'm doing. So again, just find generally the center. It doesn't have to be a perfect center. You don't have to measure anything out. Generally the center. Make a hole, and then just start stretching. Do a little bit of that archery move, and then see what we get from there. Whew, that fiber's strong. Hang on, I'll come back to that part because it does not want to move. There we go. There we go. And again, keeping my hands very far apart. The closer they are, the harder it's going to be to draft your fiber, your silk. And this, if I can get it spun up in the time we have left, this will be a really good example of how much the fiber changes as how much the silk changes when it goes from hanky to yarn. It is just, it's going to give you, it's not that the colors go away, it's that it's a completely different effect when you are twisting those fibers together versus when you have them in that sheet format. This one's tough though. I don't know why it seems to not be drafting as easily as the other two did. There's no reason for that. The nice thing about hankies, about silk hankies, especially when it comes to dyeing, and if you are one of the people out there who has an interest in dyeing, but you're a little gun shy because, oh, what if I felt my fiber? What if, anything like that? Silk is actually a good place to start. It dyes, the technique, at least if you're doing acid dyeing, the technique is very much like dyeing wool. The only thing is I find that with silk, you have to let the fiber sit a little bit longer in the dye bath versus with wool where you can just a couple minutes sometimes is enough for it to absorb and hold on to color. So if that's something that you want to try, I highly recommend starting with silk. Not starting with, but if you're nervous about it, start with silk because you can't really felt the hankies. They are very durable. So even when you're rinsing, you can run them underwater versus having to kind of do that wool thing where you just push down, pull up, let it drain. Push it down, pull it up, let it drain. Because you don't want to risk felting it. With these, you can just stick them in your hands and squeeze, and the water will just flow right out, and you don't have to worry about that. And I mentioned this last week, I am working on a video for dyeing silk hankies that will be up on the channel. I had hoped to have it up this past weekend, but ran into some technical issues. And by technical issues, I mean my ability with technology, not necessarily that the technology itself was broken. So my husband is much more familiar with the software that I'm using, so he is going to help me out. hopefully I will have that video up no later than this Friday. So if you decide that you're looking at these and going, oh, I just have to try that out, you can order some hankies and then come back to this channel and I'll have a video up there on how to dye them. And then, as I mentioned at the beginning, I will also have, starting tomorrow, just a hanky grab bag that you can order on the Etsy shop. It'll be either 3 or 5, I haven't decided yet, silk hankies that will be randomly selected for you, and you'll receive them, and I'm going to keep the price pretty low, so that's just another option. And like I said at the beginning, please don't feel obligated. Makes me very uncomfortable to make people feel obligated, but it's also a resource that you have available to you. So keep trying to remind myself of that. All right, I'm almost done with this one. Ugh. It just gets so clingy. It's so pretty though. My air conditioner finally turned off. So I try very hard not to run my air conditioner during the day, and it's mainly because the way our house is built, if you turn the air conditioner on, it will run all day. All day, all day, all day. It's not going to stop because it just doesn't, the house heats up very, very quickly. We get direct sun for most of the day, and it's just a pain. So anyway, I didn't have the air conditioner on today, and then when I cooked dinner, I had the stove and the oven going at the same time for about 25-35 minutes, and it really, really made the house heat up, and it was actually 86 degrees in my house. I will usually turn my air conditioner on before it reaches that high of a temperature. It just happened because I had the oven on. Anyway, that was at 5:30. I was like, okay, let's turn the air conditioner on as soon as the oven and the stove are turned off, and we did. It's now 10 minutes to 8, and it just shut off, and we have it set now on 80. So it took almost, or 2.5 hours for it to drop 6 degrees in our house, because our house heats up so much. So yay, the air conditioner finally turned off. But I try not to run it too much during the day, just because here, like I said, we get sun from 7 o'clock in the morning in the summer, 7 o'clock in the morning until, let's see, what time is it? About 7:45 at night. So 12 hours of just direct sun. And I know that it's just where our house is located. You know, that's not, oh, we live in Texas. Or, no, it's just our house, the direction that our house points in, we have at least one window getting full direct sun at all times during the day, which is not so good for the electric bill in the summer. But it also means I don't have to turn my lights on hardly ever until about 8 o'clock at night today. In the next month or so, I probably won't have to turn my lights on until 8:30, 9 maybe. I'm lucky. So it's just the way it works when you live in Texas, I guess. We just get those very, very long days. So this one I'm gonna try really hard, unless I find an area that's very, very thick. I'm not gonna do any pre-drafting on it. I am just feeding it right in. I mean, not pre-drafting, I'm sorry, draft as you spin. I'm just letting it flow right through. Now, you did know, you can do that. You can do a little bit of drafting as you're spinning through. It's just that much longer positioning that I find kind of awkward. So to avoid that, I just try and draft it as close to even as I can. And yeah. Now, if I was using it to make a yarn that I was going to use for a very, very specific project, I would probably try and do a lot more drafting as I was spinning, just to keep things even, but not for what I want to do. Which I think I kind of mentioned at the beginning, but still, it holds true. 3 hankies in. But you'll kind of also see how fast you can spin up one of these actually going to tighten that a little bit. You'll see how fast you can spin up a hanky if you really are in the design or really motivated to do it. I've got some weird chunks in this one, but I like it. It'll work. Trying to find another fiber to spin. That area is a little thick. I'm trying to find another fiber to spin that I haven't done before, and I don't know what I want to do next because I've done, and you're going to hate me when I tell you this, but I've done Teeswater and I don't like it. I know it's a luxury, blah, blah, blah. I don't like it. It feels like plastic to me, and it's just not pleasant as a yarn. Maybe if it was blended, but 100% Teeswater, not my thing. So I've done Teeswater, Icelandic, of course, Merino, Cordell, we've all been there. So I need something new to spin. If you are a spinner out there and you have a fiber that maybe is not necessarily the most popular, the first one you think of, but definitely one that you love to spin, please let me know. I am looking for something. I need a new challenge. I need a new spinning challenge. I finished that Icelandic, which was still just so fun to spin, but not my favorite. But it was so fun to learn a new fiber that now I've got the bug. I got to learn more fibers. So if you have a suggestion, please let me know. All right, look at that. I'm almost completely done. I am going to do some extra drafting right here because it's a little bit too thick for me and my tweezers. First up, there we go. All right. Okay. So I'm going to actually take the bobbin off the wheel. Set my wheel aside there so I can bring it up here. So you guys saw this was the one that was blue and white with pink spots in it. Now, you can see how the color changes when you spin it. It's not that it's different. It's that it's just not the same. Does that make, I don't know if that makes exact sense, but I'm hoping that seeing the visual of it is helping because the color just changes a little bit. And I've never seen another fiber that did it quite so dramatically as silk does. So it's just something to keep in mind if you are looking at specific hankies that you want to buy, or you do decide to do some dyeing, that keep it in mind that if you want a saturated color, you need it to be twice as dark as you think it needs to be. If you are looking for something pale, you still need to go with you want the finished color of the hanky to be darker than what you're looking to obtain from it, just because that's the way the fiber works, and when it spins up, it's going to look slightly different. So anyway, thank you so much for joining. I hope you enjoyed learning about silk hankies. I know I love doing it. It's a fun spin to do, and it just gets you out of the wool rut, which I like. Keep an eye on the channel because I will have the hanky dyeing video out by Sunday. The goal is to have it out by Friday. It's just going to depend on how long it takes my husband to get some time to kind of sit down with me. So, but keep an eye out for that. And we will be meeting again on Thursday doing the silk hankies again. So if you get some hankies and you want to spin along with me, please feel free to join. If you just need another hour away from the kids, away from whatever's going on in your house right now, you can join us on Thursday as well. And if nothing else, we will be back on Monday at 7 p.m. Doing another project. I am not sure. My lights just came on. Sorry. That's why it kind of blew out the color there for a second. I'm not sure what I will be doing next week, but I will announce it on Thursday for sure. I'm going to try and see if I can figure out a way to get the backstrap weaving done. But that's just going to be dependent on if I can find a good angle to get that image in there of the weave that I'm working on. So we'll see, but if not, I'll have something else planned. And as always, you are welcome to work on that, whatever I do, or work on whatever you have going on and just hang out with the rest of us. I love having you here. So have a great rest of your week. Make sure to like and subscribe to the channel so that you can get notified when I go live. And I will talk to you guys soon. Bye, guys.